Every time someone asks you a question about Alberta independence, this is a big blessing, and we got to be grateful for that. And I have to remind myself every time, hey, if someone's asking the question, that means they're interested in the answer. And I consider it a blessing that people are asking the questions.
And every morning this past harvest, I would walk out to my combine and I would see that flying above my cab. And I would see my family working together. One would be running the grain cart, another would be running the other combine, and one would be hauling the load in the semi. And in those quiet moments, I felt peace. I wasn't thinking about Ottawa or politics. I was thinking about the land, the sky, the work before us, and the people that I love. And the more I've watched it, the more I've tried to be honest about it. The certainty of where Canada is headed is far more scary than any uncertainty of forming a new nation. I get goosebumps on my face every time I actually picture this day. Walking in, taking that ballot, and stopping for a second before you mark it. Because in that moment, I hope you realize what it actually represents. It's not just your opinion or a vote, it's everything that has brought us to that moment. The thousands of people, the decades of effort, people like my dad who showed up every day and built a life here, people like my friend Rick who were willing to stand when something didn't feel right, even when it cost them greatly. People like the thousands of petition canvassers giving so much of their time to collect signatures in Alberta's cold and wind and rain. So when that day comes on October 19th, 2026, and you're standing there with that ballot in your hand, stop. Sit in the reverence of that moment and really understand what you're part of. Because when I picture that moment, I know I won't just see that ballot. I will see the field and that flag moving above my combine, and I will think about the life that was built here and the life that still could be. Thank you, and may Alberta be forever strong and free. Next, I would like to invite up then Corey Morgan, who I'm sure probably doesn't even need an introduction, because pretty much everybody knows the legend of Corey Morgan. His book, I feel like I'm a little bit of a, hypocrite up here, because so much of my information and things that I've learned have actually come from his book. It's actually amazing. You should get that book for sure. But I don't know, Corey's introduction, he kind of speaks for himself, and you're just very blessed to be able to hear his perspective on Alberta independence.
I'm honored to be second after you. In case anybody's wondering, my pronouns are he, him. I'll answer to hey, you, that guy, or any number of expletives my wife has called me. And I'd like to acknowledge that I live on private property I paid for on Treaty 7 land. Conceded forever, in perpetuity, in a contract. And it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but actually, those chants and their chants, their cultish, their prayers, they're some of the things that have been undercutting the fabric and pride of this country, and it's purposeful. It's telling children at school every day to look at their shoes because you're living on stolen land that somebody took a few generations or 5 or 6 generations before you, and you don't deserve to be there, you're a guest, and all of that. What kind of pride do you expect kids to come up with that sort of indoctrination going on? And they see it everywhere. You go to a hockey game, you listen to a radio station. Look, there was a lot of things that were done wrong to First Nations, absolutely. But we can't do reconciliation forever. And, it's a movement, and that means we have to campaign. And something I like to talk about, I guess the role I like to take is just at least helping people become better campaigners. Because there's a big emotional component to this. Asking people to vote yes is a huge ask. It's a big decision. And there are some very well-placed emotions behind the people with their connection with the Canadian flag. And I talk with people about that. I don't have a problem with the flag. I don't have a problem with Canada. I don't have a problem with the other people of Canada. I mean, I have some individuals and so on, we can have problems. But I understand my problems with the system. I'm not anti-Canada, I'm pro-Alberta. And so what I'm doing isn't something to try and harm the rest of Canada or spite Canada, you know, as much as, again, there's other parties and parts of the Canada get me upset quite often. But I'm just realizing that we can't save this whole country from this broken system, but we can save this part. And if we do that, that can spread and save the rest. You know, one of the best analogies are for people when I worked in the oil field when they talked about it. If you're in a sour area and one of your coworkers goes down, the worst thing you can do is run in and grab him by the leg, because you're going to go down too. You got to save yourself first before you can save them. We can't save the whole country, but if we save Alberta, that changes the whole picture, not just here, but for the rest of the country. That makes them reevaluate the Constitution. It forces them to. It breaks the system. We'll leave it to them to deal with that afterwards. I'm just saying this isn't a negative movement. It's a positive for Alberta, but I honestly see it as a positive for everybody in Canada in the long run. Because as we start to campaign ourselves and try to move people over, we've got to explain that to them. We're making something better. We're not just moving away from something, we're moving towards something. And it's an opportunity. I mean, the vanity we have, or some people that, to think that the Constitution is such a perfect document that it never needs to be changed again. Because basically, under the way we're sitting right now, for those who remember Meech Lake and Charlottetown, those were modest efforts to change the Constitution. They didn't even come close. So we have to accept either having that structure and Constitution forever or breaking out. That's really the only two options we have left anymore. But thank you all very much for listening to me so far, and I'm looking forward to that Q&A, and I'm going to let Chris bend your ear for a little while here.
A little cafe up in Mirror, Alberta called the Whistle Stop Cafe. Some may have heard of it, some may have not. A few years ago, Yes, the burgers are great. Thank you for the applause for the food. Appreciate it. So a few years ago, I found myself in a position where I was staring down the government. I decided to stand up for myself, not because I'm some brave superhero, but because I was broke. I was out of money, and I was backed into a corner. So something that happened in my life affected me to the point where I needed to stand up and try and change my situation. There's two different types of people in those situations. The first type of person, they may sit there and say, oh, these people are doing this to me, it's all their fault, I'm going to fail now because of them. They're a victim to that, right? The second type of person looks at what's going on and says, well, no one's coming to save me. Yes, these people are doing this, but this is what I'm going to do to change the situation. And what I've learned in the last, well, actually since I moved to Alberta in 2000, but really in the last 6 years, is that Albertans in general are the second type of people. Albertans are mostly done waiting for somebody else to come and save them. You remember the feeling around the last few elections, if only we could elect so-and-so, Alberta's going to be better. If only we could get rid of Jason Kenney, Alberta's going to be better. If only we could elect Danielle Smith, she'll save us. If only we could elect Pierre Poilievre, he's going to fix everything and save us. The people that think like that are victims to what's going on around them, and that's not how democracy and civics is supposed to work. This is supposed to be, what do you call it, what's the word? A participation thing. It's, if we don't participate in these things, in one way or another, we're going to be somebody else's victim. We are done being victims, and that's why people are filling these rooms. Corey earlier asked, how many people, is this your first meeting like this? And when we ask those questions, I'll tell you, it ranges from tonight, I think he said about 25%, a quarter of you or so, all the way up to like 75%. We don't know exactly what the future is going to hold. I don't have a crystal ball, and I can't tell you what a new Alberta will be. I can tell you what it could be all day long. I can't guarantee you that your taxes will go down. I can't guarantee you that your government will be better. Do you know why? Because I can't guarantee what each and every one of you will do when you leave this room. If I had a crystal ball and I could see how many people would be involved in these conversations and take action to better their world, I could tell you with a fantastic degree of certainty exactly how things would be. Because when the people stand up and pursue something together, they can make the changes that need to happen. Interestingly enough, there was a study done. I can't remember what the professor's name was. My friend Dr. Dennis Modry, he remembers, but I never do. Anyway, she did a study about societal change across the world, across history. And what she found was absolutely astonishing. She found that it only takes like 3.5% of a society to change the direction of the society. So when I see these polls talking about, 20%, 30%, 40% of Albertans support an independent Alberta, I'm like, okay, so we won? Is that what's happening here? But we only win if everybody is involved and you participate. We could do it with 3% probably and advocate for what we want to change the world. How much better to do it with 40 or 50 or 60%, right? So now we're at a point where we're motivated, we're listening, we're open, we're inquisitive, and we'll see that in the Q&A, I'm sure. And the reason for that is because we're trying to make sure that we make the best decision going forward. I'm going to ask a really tough question. This is the hardest question you'll answer tonight if you're one of these folks. I am well aware and extremely appreciative that people attend these events that do not agree with me. That is fantastic for me. That gives me hope. I'd like to know how many people in this room tonight are either on the fence or staunchly opposed to the idea of a sovereign Alberta. You have to have some bravery to answer because most people here are on board. Okay, I see a couple. That's fantastic. That is absolutely great. And yeah, thank you. Yeah, give her a round of applause. So how great is that people that don't agree with us are here to listen to us, right? That's what this is all about. That's what democracy is about. In a world where cancel culture is the debate weapon of choice, in a world where a noisy, squeaky wheel group will harass and intimidate a venue to the point where they cancel me and our speakers, having people attend and listen and ask questions and participate in these discussions is extremely valuable. It's not something we get to sit on the sidelines for. And when I talk about participation, I don't just mean going and ticking a box in October, presumably. I mean going out there every day and wearing your opinion on your sleeve. Breaking down the stigma of sovereignty. Getting past the idea that, someone that believes in a sovereign Alberta is a dirty separatist. No, I'm not. I believe in self-determination. I believe that the people that are governed under any rules should have the opportunity to change those rules should they see fit. Should they determine that those rules no longer serve them. We can't do that right now. So no matter what your political stripe is, no matter what your policy ideas or aspirations are, as an Albertan, there is nothing you can do to change your situation or the way you're governed in Confederation. If you believe in democracy and you believe that people have the right to self-determine as an inherent right, not to be tyrannized by someone else somewhere else, you are a sovereignty-minded Albertan. And you need to speak up. And you need to be proud of your opinions, not sheepish. We need to be bold. Those that are against my idea of an independent Alberta, they're very bold. They're on Facebook and social media and the news and in the legislature talking down to people like me, saying that we're traitors, calling me racist, calling me homophobic. I have no idea how that works with Alberta Independence, any of those things. But they're literally reducing this very important conversation down to some social issue that it has nothing to do with. And they do it so that people like me and those that share my opinions can be dehumanized to the point where they can be rejected and ignored. Well, I can tell you one thing. People thought that they were going to be able to do that to me when I spoke up against what the government was doing in 2020, 2021, against the COVID restrictions. No matter what side of that fence you're on, they said, nobody's going to listen to you. The cop that arrested me put his arm around me the very first day. He said, I admire what you're doing, Chris, but you can't win. And I said, hold my beer. looking back, it's ironic that I said that because he actually came back a couple months later and seized all my beer. But my point is, they're trying to tell me and you to shut up and sit down. You're not important. You're a ist or an ism or a traitor or whatever, and we're not going to listen to you while they're listening. I know they're listening. They are 100% listening, and they're shitting their pants. Pardon me. They are.
It's available to read and download on albertaprosperity.com. So it's not a very exciting read because it's a fiscal document, but it goes through everything from military to immigration to border services to passports and the costs of all that and where that money comes from to be able to run that all. So there is an immigration section in there too that does address that.
Our problem isn't immigration, it's mass immigration. That's the problem. It was unplanned, unrestrained, uncontrolled immigration. So, well, some. And part of it though is we gotta be careful and realize that controlled immigration with a plan is a benefit. And going after a lot of the people, there are a lot of great immigrants here. And we don't want to alienate them at this point. I mean, we don't want to be overly reactive. We got a whole pile of temporary foreign workers and fake students and potential terrorists and all sorts of people here. We want to get them the hell out. But we do want to do it in a non-knee-jerk reactions sort of way. We become independent, we get all those dollars back, and we start building our infrastructure, which is what we need to do. We also are going to need the doctors, the engineers, the chemists, the construction workers. We're going to boom. But we, as was said, we have to have an immigration system with a plan, though, make sure we're bringing in people who are coming here to contribute and participate and filter out those who are coming here to be parasitic. But it's a serious issue, but we also you just got to be careful to make sure that we understand we will need immigration. We just have to do it right. Easier said than done sometimes.
What was the question?
And it was about we've been hearing, a lot of people have been hearing on the internet that Mark Carney has said he was going to invoke the Emergencies Act if we became independent. We tried to track that. I was in the newsroom at the Western Standard. We had reporters on it, because that'd be a fantastic story for us if he said it. But we can't find, and look, I don't like to give Carney credit for anything, but we can't find a gram of solid evidence anywhere that he actually said that. I wouldn't put it beyond them to do all sorts of things to stop us, but just for the sake of being responsible, we looked into it. We just can't find evidence of that particular thing being said. But we always got to be on guard, though. The fact that people believe it shows just how sick the system is. That's, you know, it's frightening.
Alberta Prosperity Project was kind of like the leading organization in education on sovereignty and independence and the merits of it, and had to kind of go into a hibernation phase during the petition campaign. But the petition campaign ends on May 2nd, and then Alberta Prosperity Project will be back and doing a lot of educational stuff. But in the meantime, all of the education that we've prepared and all those questions and answers are still on albertaprosperity.com. Like, all that information is there. There's also a really great resource section that has printables and downloadables that if you want to go into that conversation and present something to someone or be able to give them a paper copy of something. But there is a question and answer section there too that talks specifically about CPP, about Indigenous rights.
Yeah, the financial paper you're talking about, is that on there?
Yes. The financial paper is called The Value of Freedom, and it's on albertaprosperity.com as well. And it's been a public document for about a year now, so people have been invited to actually give feedback on it. It's been reviewed by economists, so it stands the test.
The monarchy, if Alberta becomes hopefully a sovereign state, will they keep the monarchy or get rid of it?
I think you heard I said no. I want to point out something really interesting. Did you know that Quebec actually recently voted to completely reject the monarchy in all forms? Years ago, they even before this, they put a for sale sign on the Lieutenant Governor's house. Can you believe that? So Quebec is like, no, we don't want anything to do with you. I'm sorry, that was yeah, and they did that while the king was in Canada. You know, so this is not just something Alberta feels. This is other provinces as well, especially Quebec.
So that means there will be no Westminster system like we have right now? That'll be abolished?
Well, hold on. I would advocate that we have something different. But again, I don't have a crystal ball, and I don't know, am I going to be able to bring enough people with me to advocate for my position of a republic? That's what I want. But it's going to be up to us. And that's the really important point, is all of these things, what it's going to look like after, is completely up to us for the first time in history. It has never been like that before, and this is the opportunity that we're working towards, is that we can decide those things as Albertans.
We win, and all of a sudden, how long is it going to take us to put border people in place and policing in place so we can control our borders? Because they're going to come in, and they're going to come in quite a bit. So I'm just curious what's there.
Well, you're right. People will want to move here, and I've heard that there's going to be a lot. Pardon me if you're in this group of people, I'm not trying to offend, but I hear all the time Liberals saying that they're going to leave if Alberta goes independent. Right? So, hey, there might be some Liberals here. This is it is true that people will want to live in the freest, most prosperous, highest GDP, most business-oriented place on the planet that believes in individual rights and freedoms and has all hell for a basement, which means we have lots of oil and gas, right? The reality is it's not going to happen overnight. It isn't. But I'm actually okay with that because I'm not super concerned about people from Saskatchewan. I'm not super concerned about people from British Columbia, and we have a big buffer of the Rocky Mountains between here and the Lower Mainland. Right, so at least we have that. If you want to know a specific timeline, I would say that any of these questions about timeline have a lot to do with how successful we are with the referendum. If the referendum has a very large majority win, like say 60% plus, things are going to happen very, very quickly because that's a very strong mandate that will be very hard to debate or oppose. If we get 51%, or 50.5%, things are going to happen very, very, very slow. Corey says like it would be like a decade of fighting about it, right? So if you want things to happen quickly, we have to not only plan ahead and talk about these things in advance, but we have to make sure that we get a big majority so the will of the people is very visible. Now, if you want my specific opinion on how long it would take, I would guess we could secure our borders within 6 months. We already have the people, we have the will, we have the equipment. All it is uniform changes, maybe a badge change, a little bit of training, and it can be done.
Okay, so I kind of want to hear your guys' feedback on this too, because I've heard from a different group that's trying to organize the negotiation phase that it could actually happen much quicker than that. That if we hand over our list of negotiations and this is your cost Canada, this is our cost Canada, this is how it buffers out and who owes who what, and we hand that over to our government that enters, our provincial government that enters into the negotiation phase with Canada on our behalf, that we should set a time limit on it. Because otherwise it will drag out for decades and decades, because that only benefits Canada to do that. So what if we did put a time limit on it of 90 days or 6 months and said, after this, like negotiations are done, we gave you your time, and we are declaring our sovereignty, we're out of here.
Yeah, those discussions tie into a question we hear quite a bit. Like, a lot of people ask, well, what will happen the day after a yes vote? Well, as Chris has kind of said, it'd be a lot of hungover people after a big party. But aside from that, nothing immediately is going to be different. I mean, the world has changed dramatically, but the provincial government is still in place, the premier is still there, the existing laws are still there, the federal laws are still there. We'll strike a constitutional convention with Albertans getting together. That is going to take a few months, even just gathering the people and agreeing on it and getting that mandate together. As Chris said, our strongest strength is having a strong mandate. If we're over 60% in some, there's just no case to be made against our becoming sovereign. If we're coming in at 51, 52%, guys, it's a recipe for a nightmare. We need to have it strong to stop the challenges. And that'll affect how fast it'll be. As far as a lot of the whether people would move here too and such, look, if we've had an independent Alberta that voted yes, you got to think of the kind of people who are going to move here or try anyways. Do you think a bunch of welfare bums are going to come to a province where they just stood up at 60% and said, we're making a new country where we're going to kick out the welfare bums? They're not coming here. The ambitious will come here. the people who want to make a life for themselves, the people who want those personal freedoms. So that influx we would get is predominantly going to be the kind of people we want to have here. But that Clarity Act, just one final thing, as you were saying, with putting a timeline on it or something, if they're ragging the puck and they're dragging their butts and they're trying to delay the process and the negotiations, if you read the Clarity Act and the Supreme Court reference case, it says good faith. And it'll become pretty clear if one side or particularly the other is not negotiating in good faith and not working us towards our exit from the Federation. It says in that reference case there isn't a mechanism to declare unilateral independence, but it also says there isn't a bloody thing they could do to stop it either if things fell apart and the province declared. When it comes to that, all a country needs is recognition from two major states, countries around the world, and you're on your own. I mean, that's the least desirable way to go, because we've got so many connections and things we'd rather negotiate out rather than try to take a knife and sever it. But a line will have to be drawn in the sand at some point and say, look, this is the timeline, and if we're still negotiating by these months, we can't keep spinning our wheels, we're out. So these are decisions we'll have to make though in the Constitutional Convention. Just stay involved. This is our choice, like Chris was saying, this is gonna be up to us, and let's win it with as strong a mandate as possible. Every % higher the yes vote is, the easier our task is gonna be to break loose.
If you saw any of the signing stations around reserves, at least where I'm from in Central Alberta, there's tons of First Nations people signing the petition, right? So we know that they're involved. We do hear a lot of vocal opposition from the people who benefit from the status quo. You know what I'm talking about. But we're a largely conservative group that's pursuing this. And the reason for that is because Canada is a liberal nation. And they've shown it over and over and over again. The majority of time, Canada is governed by liberal governments. And I'm not talking like liberal from the 1950s. I'm talking about progressive, like pursuing woke ideology that doesn't benefit us liberals. And that's not what Alberta wants. Alberta is more conservative. This, of course, would benefit a liberal anyhow, because whether you're a conservative or a liberal, how would paying 80% less taxes not benefit you? Same with First Nations people. First Nations people, if you take the time to do a little bit of digging, and I did, I wrote a blog article, whistlestoptruckstop.ca/blog, why Alberta Independence will benefit First Nations the most. That's what it's called. If you look at the statistics that our First Nations brothers and sisters live under, it's absolutely terrifying, horrendous. Nobody should be advocating for the status quo when it comes to them. They would actually benefit more than anybody else in the province, or in Alberta. So when you can speak to the facts and cut through the emotional bias or the propaganda that people are spoon-fed by those who wish to continue the status quo, all Albertans will benefit, not just conservatives. So we do see it. But to bring them on board, it's what Corey said. Sometimes we just got to plant the seeds and let the federal government do what they do best, be salespeople for Alberta Independence, and let those seeds grow on their own.
Just when it comes to the reserves, and as Chris said, like it's a number I put out often when I'm talking about things or even my show. It certainly didn't make as much news as it should have. But in Alberta, a Native man on a reserve dies 19 years younger than any other man in the province. Think about that, 19 years younger. That's a catastrophe. That should be international news. And there's a whole number of things going on. It's an addiction crisis, it's a social damage, it's suicides, it's murders, it's even diabetes is higher. This is an indication of a system that's catastrophically failing the people on those reserves. If anybody's getting screwed by this system, it's the people living on the reserves. But as for asking how to get to them, that, is there a good organized effort for it? Not yet. It's the people are trying and we want to. But the gatekeepers are the chiefs and councils. So those familiar with what I'm up to too, I've been charged with trespassing on the Siksika Reserve. That's going to trial in June because I shot video of the housing conditions on there after they got $1.3 billion and it looks like Mexico. So, but that's because the chiefs and councils don't want it exposed what is happening there. And we can't go door knock on a reserve. I mean, I shot my video off public roads, but if I went door knocking, I will be charged with trespassing because I am. So we've got a tough task. We need to do outreach somehow and reach the people who are already there, some people to speak to their neighbors on there. And because they're in such socioeconomic distress, or at least so many of them, it's a very difficult task. we gotta keep it in mind too, because they are our Albertan citizens and cousins, and they should be benefiting from this as much or more as all the rest of us. They're important. But I'm all ears when it talks how we can outreach and get to the people there, because I think there are a lot of people who would be on board if we could talk to them, but boy, it's tough to get it happening. CBC, the state broadcaster, gets $1.5 billion a year, and their market share of the evening news is 3.6%. People aren't watching their crap. We're paying for it, and they are doing other things to flood social media, and a lot of people do look at other conventional media, so part of it is looking at other areas. If you look at the polls too, Canadian trust of media is at an all-time low, so they're not believing half of what they're seeing. They know that they're getting a slanted message when they do get it to their phone. So it's up to us to get multiple sources of things like I was talking about with the Emergencies Act rumor, which sounded plausible, but as far as we could tell, it wasn't happening. They're gonna spread rumors about us that are negative, and it's gonna be fires we have to put out. But just to finish, the way we can beat it too, as Chris said, is becoming too big to fail, too big to lose. But one-on-one in rooms like this. CBC can't get between you and me. They can't get between you and your neighbor. That's why it has to be these personal conversations. That's where the trust is, because people aren't trusting the media. They aren't trusting what they're seeing online.
Okay, someone asked me to ask this question. What's happening with the judge and the petition signature thing that was on a stay? Do we have any more information?
I don't have any more information on it other than it's just on a stay right now. We're allowed to collect signatures. Our signatures will still go in. Just Elections Alberta can't count them. But that's okay, because we were going to have them independently audited anyways. And that independent audit can still take us to the Premier's office and still land the petitions on our desk. So I don't know when the timeline is. Do you know, Chris, more about it?
I heard something on a podcast today that it was a month, that she stayed it for a month. Is that sound right?
Yeah, but I believe that means too that she has up to a month to deliver her her verdict, her ruling, right? Her ruling. But then I'd also heard that was going to happen this week, which would be by tomorrow then. So I don't know. Sorry.
On that note, I imagine we're going to see lots of things coming from government or court or whatever trying to block us. That's probably going to happen because the status quo wants to maintain because it benefits itself for those who are at the top. The idea of Alberta independence isn't about asking permission or trying to somehow acknowledge that this is the system we want to be in. When we're saying we want Alberta sovereignty, we are rejecting the current system. We are rejecting the current constitution, wholeheartedly. I don't want that. I want something for us, by us. So when a court says, oh, you can't do this because of this, I say, the will of the people will decide. It's the will of the people that is supposed to compel our legislators to make laws on our behalf, and then the court interprets it, right? So in some cases, as with Bill 14, government identifies that there's a piece of legislation that was interpreted by the courts in a manner that wasn't consistent with the spirit of the legislation, right? So Bill 14 said that Albertans want to be able to compel government to put a referendum to the people. That's direct democracy. That's what we asked for. Well, the courts interpreted something in there to say that we could only ask certain questions. And our government acknowledged, no, if the people want to ask a question, it doesn't matter what the courts or the laws say about it. It's the will of the people, and that has to be respected. And then the question is asked. The outcome of the question is a different story. So what I'm getting at here is don't get bogged down with you can't do this because of this, or the court said this about that. Keep your eye on the goal of Alberta sovereignty, of a system where we write the rules and the rules benefit us, and don't let the noise of the wailing and gnashing of teeth of the current system bog you down. Eye on the prize, laser focused, go there. Just keep swimming.
Just so you know too, there's a few people working on constitutions and things, and I suspect there'll be some confusion if and when some get released publicly or they come out. There is no one group or single constitution that is going to necessarily be what's coming post yes vote. What those are suggestions, perhaps well thought out and drawn out, and they may be the model that it goes towards. But if anybody tells you an independent Alberta will have this constitution, they're misleading you. If they say an independent Alberta will have this policy, they're misleading you. There's things we know we want to move towards, and that's kind of why we talk a bit in generalities. But it's up to us, and it was a good point made that, hey, we're humans, and the worst thing we could possibly do is break out of this system and create one that's even worse than the one we left, and maybe we do deserve to be broke. But the cure to it, and Chris keeps coming back to it, is our own participation. When the Constitutional Convention comes and people are in there, get active, get informed, get involved. The job doesn't stop the day after a yes vote. It really actually just starts beginning. And we have to stay engaged all the way to the end.
Hey. Well, I think that concludes our evening. Thank you very much. This was absolutely fantastic. Before you go, I have one more thing. I just want to let everybody know that before I even arrived, or any of us arrived, there was a group of volunteers here that showed up just to do all the work. So thank you very much to all the volunteers who made this possible.